Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Unhair the Interview. Today we have the pleasure to interview not only a visionary but a revolutionary hairdresser for many around the globe, creator of his own DNA, with suitability as the main approach to beauty, the creator international director of Seiko Hair International, Mr. Richard Ashford. Richard, can you share with us please the beginning of your journey from the moment you started in the hairdressing industry?
So my journey into hairdressing was a little bit accidental. I had no real intention of becoming a hairdresser. I wanted to do music or fashion, and I ended up in hair because it seemed like a nice place to be to try and make a little bit of money while I was trying to get other things going. But actually, within a very short space of time, I fell deeply in love with it. I really developed a passion for it quite quickly when I started working for my mother's hairdresser, a gentleman called Robert Taylor, in my hometown of Sheffield, which is in the north of England. And he still is a fantastic man. You know, he really sort of inspired me and gave me an insight into shape and finish. And he was so passionate about hairdressing himself that he really sort of managed to enthuse all his team to get excited about hair and to push themselves. And I spent 2 very happy years, maybe 2.5 very happy years there, but realised eventually that I wanted to learn how to cut hair properly, and that wasn't something that was probably Robert's strong suit. And one day I saw a Sassoon collection in a magazine and knew that was, you know, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to work. So I moved to London from Sheffield and started at Sassoon, did my retraining, and ended up staying at Sassoon in various locations, doing various jobs, different roles. For almost 20 years. So from the amazing heady days of the Manchester salon through the late 80s and 90s through to the 2000s at the London Academy, I had really fantastic opportunities to grow personally and push myself and be pushed by some really incredible people.
Richard, did you ever expect at that moment in time that this would be the profession that would allow you to express yourself in your environment?
Well, I guess when I first started, I'd not really considered it as being a long-term thing, but as I said, very quickly I sort of fell in love with it, and it had all those elements that I loved. You know, I mean, it was creative, it was fashion related. I got to listen to music all day. So it was a really great environment, you know, that salon environment. There's nothing like a busy salon environment for you to feel excited and feel worthy and kind of validated when you're able to give people great hair and make people happy, and you know, and that it's a very instant thing, and you know, that really, I guess, was the thing that sort of hooked me on hairdressing. That I got a great deal of, you know, satisfaction out of making people smile, and it was that really that sort of, as I say, hooked me on hair, and then. You know, my creative journey, I guess, I've always felt I've been a creative person, even from a young age. But how that sort of developed within hair changed over the years. You know, I think a lot of the time in the early part of my career, I was really doing a lot of self-learning, and I'm a big believer in self-learning. I do think we're our own greatest teacher, you know. We do that through mistakes, and you know, so long as you're sort of staying engaged with your work and realizing what works, what doesn't work, how can you improve, what can you do better next time, I think you become your own best educator, if you will. But I think as time went on and I got to work with some kind of quite special people as I kind of climbed up the tree at Sassoon, you know, and got to work more closely with Tim Hartley or Mark Hayes, I really sort of began to see a different level of work, and it wasn't just about technical expertise, it was about a perspective and trying to develop your own perspectives on style, I think, as much as anything, you know, about how you can influence yourself and nourish your own creative process, and dig down and drill down into your own psyche about what stimulates you and really kind of what turns you on visually and you know, I guess just generally aesthetically what it was that really I identified with as a creative person, as a hairdresser.
How much that you believe in the idea that to become a good teacher, you need to absorb the need of those who you teach?
That's a great question. I think, yeah, definitely. I think you've got to be present and you've got to be locked into somebody else's perspective, perhaps, what it is that they need, you know, looking at their ability at that given point and seeing what you can add, what you can offer them to take them to the next level. You know, it's not always about offering every piece of information possible. It's about offering sort of little bite-sized pieces that's going to allow somebody to elevate their work to the next level, and get them to a point where they feel confident with their approach. So I think, you know, understanding the needs of your student is everything, really, isn't it?
Amigo, what do you think we should look for when choosing a mentor?
I think when one's looking for a mentor, I think you've got to find somebody who shares a similar perspective to you, somebody whose work you admire and aspire towards, and obviously somebody who wants to help you and share their experience and knowledge and understanding of hair and everything that surrounds it with you. I think, you know, to a degree, I think you can kind of do that a little bit remotely as well these days, but really nothing is a substitute for being able to stand at the side of somebody and just watch them work, to be able to pick their brains a little bit, and glean some next level understanding of your path, and you know how you need to progress yourself.
What or whom inspired Richard Ashford?
Who inspires me, or what inspires me? I guess what inspires me is music, it's fashion, and design. So everything from architecture to photography. But I'm big into my music. That's always been my first love, if you like. And I grew up in the 80s, late 80s, and all those amazing musical genres that evolved through the 70s and into the 80s that produced all these youth subcultures, I think have been such an inspiration to me, and it's still something I draw on today. You know, so from the hippie movement into the punk movement, into the post-punk, new romantic eras.
Richard, how do you see a good foundation of paying your dues compared to those who think of that type of education as overrated and prefer to see something that can be simply gained by going online and watching through a screen?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? And I think at this moment in time, the idea of online learning is certainly sort of flourishing, and it's become the almost the be-all and end-all of education, certainly within our profession. And I think this gives opportunities for people to dip the toe in that arena, And certainly I think from a younger person's perspective, it's an exciting thing to do, to put yourself out there and try and share your knowledge and your perspective with a wider audience. So it's great in terms of a goal and an encouragement, but I think you really need to have something of some kind of weight to offer, you know. I'm a really big believer in sort of paying your dues and earning your stripes as a hairdresser, and you know, as a creative, as a technician, and that takes time. You know, that takes time investing in yourself. It takes time to learn from others, and only then, really, when you're getting close to being a fairly rounded professional, are you in a position to kind of share any sort of great knowledge with anybody. You know, it took me, I think, a long time before I felt I really had something worthwhile to offer as an educator. You know, almost 20 years perhaps before I felt that it was a worthwhile amount of time, and I could charge somebody money, or I could charge somebody money, but I would feel comfortable with somebody paying money for things I could offer them in terms of education. Whereas I think perhaps now the perspective on education shifted a little bit, and I think people feel that maybe it's just a natural stepping stone after qualifying, that once you've learned, you can then share, you know. And for sure you can, maybe to people around you and people younger, but I don't really think you can qualify as a hairdresser and then 6 months later offer yourself as an educator. I think you've got such limited knowledge at that point. You perhaps don't realise it at the time, but I think as you gain more experience, that becomes more and more apparent, that you're only really hitting the tip of the iceberg when you've just qualified. You know, I think it's only as you grow and you learn and you make mistakes and you learn to overcome those challenges and mistakes, that then you can turn that around and offer that to others.
Amigo, how do you see the evolution of the industry on a near future, and what is your advice?
How do I think things will change and develop? I think we're living in very interesting times, aren't we? And this COVID time has certainly highlighted different things in the industry. I think it's, as we said, it's pushed online education forwards, and hopefully that's improved because of that. But I think it's also highlighted, moreover, I think it's highlighted the fact that we love being together. And, you know, there's no substitute for one-to-one education or personal education, and there's no substitute for being at a show in person or an awards event in person, to share and celebrate our industry together. You know, we are people, persons, and you know, that's become really apparent to me. And I think as soon as things allow, I think we'll return, maybe not wholly return to that way of communicating, and but I think that'll be, you know, the main way that we will kind of relate to one another and celebrate who we are as a profession. I think also it's perhaps highlighted for a lot of people in our industry their own worth to their clients. I think perhaps sometimes people underestimate what hair means to people in the everyday, you know, and it is it's a very important thing. It's a very special thing to be able to offer somebody some happiness and joy and confidence through giving them some great hair, you know. And I think it's this time when we've not been able to be in the salon and see people as regularly. I think it really highlights the fact that we are important, we are needed as an industry. And I think that can only be a good thing. I think it's something that's often forgotten. And we're very guilty of undervaluing ourselves sometimes as an industry. So hopefully it's given everybody a little bit more of a kind of a positive self-image, and they realise the value of what we offer.